Books that priests confiscated and burned. Books that monarchs sealed inside royal archives and never catalogued. Books that scholars copied in secret and signed with false names. Some of those copies still sit in restricted vaults. The Bodleian, the Vatican Apostolic Archive, accessible only to credentialed researchers who sign a form before they open the box. Tonight, you are going to meet the one spirit inside the most famous grimoire ever written who defies every rule the others follow. One entry, in a catalogue of 72 entities built entirely around coercion and danger, that carries a descriptor no other entry carries. The word good. We call these texts grimoires, and that single anomalous word is what nobody seems to want to discuss honestly. This channel is an anthology. Each episode, we open one of these forbidden texts and pull from it a single name, the entity its own author warned should never be called. Tonight that name comes from the most copied, most feared, and most misunderstood ceremonial text in Western occult history. What follows is esoteric tradition and religious folklore. Read closely. I am not making metaphysical claims, but the same warnings surface, century after century, in books that never met each other, and some patterns persist for reasons we do not entirely understand. That consistency is worth taking seriously, even if you approach it from a purely historical perspective. These sources still matter because institutions still treat them as dangerous. Certain manuscript versions of the text we are discussing tonight remain restricted in scholarly archives, not because librarians believe in demons, but because the documents themselves are fragile, contested, and politically charged in ways that have not fully resolved. The British Library holds copies it does not digitize. That is a fact worth sitting with. If the darker corners of esoteric history fascinate you, subscribe. Every week we read what was never meant to be read. Pull up a map of the British Isles and find the Bodleian Library at Oxford. Somewhere inside its manuscript collection sits a 17th century text known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, specifically its first book, the Ars Goetia. The most studied version is catalogued under the Sloane Manuscript Collection at the British Library, Sloane MS 2000, 731, dated to the mid-1600s. It is not a printed book. It is a handwritten working document, copied by practitioners for practitioners, and it contains the names, ranks, seals, and dispositions of 72 spirits, arranged in precise hierarchical order. The tradition tells us that King Solomon himself bound these spirits beneath a brass vessel and cast it into a lake. The legend continues that the Babylonians, believing the vessel contained treasure, retrieved it and broke the seal, releasing all 72 back into the world. Supposedly, Solomon had anticipated this. Each spirit was already documented, every name, every office, every power, already written down so that a trained operator could call them back under control. That is the framing the text itself provides. Now here is what makes the third spirit different from every other entry in that list. The Ars Goetia describes Vasago as a spirit of the same nature as Agares, but then adds, in plain language, that he is of a good nature. Read that again, good nature. In a catalogue of 72 entities, almost every other entry comes with warnings. He destroys dignities, he causes discord, he burns cities. Vasago's entry does not. Instead, the text says, he discovers things hidden and declares things past, present, and to come. He finds lost objects, he reveals the hidden. And the tradition holds, consistently, across multiple manuscript lineages, that he does not deceive the operator, not the symbol, the thing. That phrase, good nature, is a technical term in this system. It does not mean friendly, it does not mean safe. It means the spirit's operations are oriented toward disclosure rather than destruction. The Goetia is a system built almost entirely around coercion. You bind a spirit, you compel it, you protect yourself from it. Vasago is the one entry where the text implies the coercion may be less necessary. That is an extraordinary claim inside a document that otherwise treats every entity as a potential threat. Vasago. The name does not have a clean Hebrew etymology the way Belial does, Beli Ya'al, without worth, a name that is itself a verdict. Vasago's name appears in no pre-Goetia Hebrew or Aramaic source with any confirmed meaning. Across European manuscript variants, the spelling shifts. Vasago, Vasagu, Vasago. The instability of the name across centuries of copying is itself a data point. What is consistent is not the spelling. It is the attributed quality, truth-telling. Now, I want to be precise about what the historical record actually supports. There is no ancient text predating the 17th century that contains Vasago's name. The spirit does not appear in the Testament of Solomon, the earlier Greek text that the Goetia claims as its ancestor. He is not in the Munich manual, catalogued CLM 849, still shelved in the Bavarian State Library, which is one of the oldest surviving European grimoires. He appears, fully formed, in the 17th century manuscript tradition and not before. That is a fact. The claim of Solomonic antiquity is a literary convention, not a documented lineage. But what fascinates me about the legend is its internal logic. If you were constructing a system of 72 spirits designed to be used, actually used, by practitioners who needed results, you would need at least one entity whose output could be trusted. A system with no reliable source of information is a system that collapses under its own uncertainty. Vasago functions, within the internal logic of the Goetia, as the one verifiable node, the one spirit you could theoretically cross-reference against reality. The system is not designed to be safe, it is designed to be functional. Now, here is where the trail goes cold in the most interesting possible way. Cast your mind back to 1563. A Flemish physician named Johann Weyer, sometimes spelled Weyer, publishes a book called De Praestigiis Daemonum, a systematic attempt to catalogue and debunk the demonic hierarchies that the church and the courts were using to send people to the stake. Weyer was a skeptic, a rationalist by the standards of his century, and his work is considered one of the earliest defenses of those accused of witchcraft. 20 years later, in 1583, he publishes an appendix, a standalone demonological catalogue called the Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum, 69 spirits, named, ranked, and described. It is one of the direct precursors to the Ars Goetia as we know it, and it sits today in the historical record as a foundational document of early modern demonology. Vasago is not in it. Not misplaced, not abbreviated, not hiding under an alternate spelling. 69 spirits, and the third spirit of the Ars Goetia, the one we are here to discuss, is simply absent. Weyer catalogued Baal, Agares, Barbas. He gave us Paimon and Buer and Goujon, but the tradition tells us that Vasago, supposedly one of the most ancient and distinctive of the Goetic spirits, the one described elsewhere as uniquely benign, did not make Weyer's list. The legend, as practitioners have debated it for centuries, suggests that certain spirits were deliberately omitted, either because they were considered too dangerous to name, or, and this is the reading I find more compelling, because they belonged to a separate, parallel tradition that Weyer simply did not have access to. There is a line from Weyer's own preface that scholars keep returning to. He writes, and I am quoting the Latin now in translation, "I have set down such things as I found written, and no more." Read that again. Such things as I found written. Weyer is not claiming completeness. He is claiming fidelity to his sources. And his sources did not contain Vasago. Notice what that does not say. It does not say Vasago does not exist within the tradition. It says Weyer's manuscripts did not mention him. That is a completely different claim. The absence is not a negation, it is a gap in the archive. And gaps in archives are some of the most revealing things in the historical record, not the denial, the silence. Vasago, the name itself, is worth pausing on. Its etymology is contested, but the most rigorous analysis traces it through late Latin manuscript corruptions of an older Semitic root, possibly connected to a verb meaning to perceive or to reveal. A name that describes a function, not what the entity is, but what it does, that is unusual. Most demonic names in the tradition encode identity, origin, rank, nature. Vasago's name, if this etymology holds, encodes a purpose. Disclosure. Now, there is no credible historical evidence that Weyer deliberately suppressed Vasago. He was a physician, not a conspiracist, and the more parsimonious explanation is simply that his manuscript sources, whatever they were, did not include the third spirit. Scholars like Frank Claassen at the University of Saskatchewan have documented extensively how medieval grimoire traditions fragmented and diverged, with different manuscript families containing radically different spirit lists. Weyer worked from what he had. That is the honest answer. But what fascinates me about the omission is its effect on the tradition that followed. Because Vasago's absence in Weyer is precisely what makes his presence in the Ars Goetia so striking. When the later compilers put him back, and they did put him back, as the third spirit, a position of extraordinary prominence, they were making a choice. A deliberate editorial decision to restore something that the most famous demonological catalogue of the 16th century had left out. Someone decided Vasago belonged, and they put him third. The silence is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of the argument. Step forward now, 3 centuries. We are in London, in 1904, and two of the most controversial figures in the history of Western esotericism are about to put their names on one of the most influential occult publications of the modern era. Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers was a founding member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a scholar of Kabbalah, and a translator of several key grimoire texts. Aleister Crowley was his former student, his eventual rival, and a man whose biography is so saturated in deliberate provocation that separating his genuine scholarship from his theater is a full-time academic occupation. Together, though the collaboration was acrimonious, they produced the Book of the Goetia of Solomon the King, published in 1904 by the Society for the Propagation of Religious Truth, which was Crowley's own imprint. The translation was primarily Mathers's work, drawn from manuscript Sloane 2731, held at the British Library. Crowley wrote the introduction and contributed extensive editorial commentary. The legend around this edition, and it is very much a legend in occult circles, is that Crowley did not simply edit the text. The tradition tells us that he actively practiced the rituals it describes, that he conducted evocations in a specially prepared chamber, and that by his own account in his diaries and published memoirs, certain workings produced results he considered genuine. Supposedly, Crowley's engagement with the Goetia was not academic. It was operational. Whether you take that seriously or not is entirely your own business. There is a line from Crowley's 1904 introduction that has divided readers ever since. He writes, "The spirits of the brazen vessel are, in truth, portions of the human brain," because that sentence is doing something very specific. Crowley is not dismissing the spirits, he is relocating them. He is saying the system works, but the mechanism is psychological, not supernatural. And then he proceeds to publish every ritual instruction as if they are meant to be followed literally. Read that again. He calls them portions of the human brain, and then tells you exactly how to summon them. That tension is not accidental. It is the entire argument of the 1904 edition compressed into one sentence. Not theology, not debunking, something stranger than either. Now, in this edition, Vasago appears as the third spirit, described in language directly continuous with the earlier manuscript tradition. His good nature is preserved. His function, the discovery of hidden things, the declaration of things past and to come, survives every editorial hand intact. Crowley does not amplify Vasago, does not dramatize him, does not use him for rhetorical effect. He simply transmits the description. For a man as theatrical as Crowley, that restraint is itself a data point. Vasago, the name, across all the manuscript variants in the Mathers-Crowley edition, appears without significant orthographic instability. Most spirit names in the grimoire tradition mutate across manuscripts. Vasago does not. That consistency across transmission is, for textual scholars, a meaningful signal. There is a credibility problem with Crowley that any honest treatment of this subject has to acknowledge. He fabricated, he exaggerated. He contradicted himself across decades of published work, and his claims about his own ritual practice should be treated with significant skepticism. The historian Alex Owen, in her 2004 study The Place of Enchantment, documents how Crowley's self-mythology consistently outran the documentary evidence. That is the honest assessment. But what fascinates me is that Crowley's credibility problems are almost entirely irrelevant to the textual question, because the Mathers translation was not Crowley's invention. It was drawn from a physical manuscript that still exists and can be examined. And in that manuscript, Vasago's description is exactly what the 1904 edition says it is. The editor's character does not alter the document's contents. The text survived its publisher. If you want to find the most rigorous modern treatment of the Goetia as a manuscript tradition, you do not go to an occult bookshop. You go online to a website called Esoteric Archives, maintained by a scholar named Joseph H. Peterson. Peterson is not a household name outside of academic circles focused on the history of Western esotericism, but among researchers in that field, his critical editions of grimoire texts are considered essential. His digital edition of the Lemegeton, the larger work of which the Ars Goetia is the first book, is built from direct consultation of multiple manuscript witnesses, cross-referenced and annotated with the kind of apparatus you would expect from a university press edition. The primary manuscript he works from is British Library, Sloane, 2731, the same document Mathers used in 1904, but Peterson also draws on additional manuscript 36674 and several other witnesses to establish variant readings. The tradition around Peterson's work, in the sense that practitioners discuss it, is that his edition finally gave serious readers a way to distinguish what the manuscripts actually say from what editors like Crowley wanted them to say. Supposedly, Peterson's apparatus reveals dozens of places where the 1904 edition introduced errors, omissions, or deliberate alterations. The tradition tells us that for the first time in the modern period, someone was treating the Goetia the way a classicist would treat a disputed Greek text, with paleographic rigor, not spiritual investment. There is a line from Peterson's own editorial notes that I want you to sit with. He writes, regarding the spirit list, the text presents Vasago as of the same nature as Agares, but good. Notice what that phrase is doing. Of the same nature as Agares. Agares is the second spirit, ranked immediately above Vasago, a Grand Duke commanding 31 legions. But good, 2 words, appended as a qualification, not as an afterthought, as a distinction. I want you to notice what that does not say. It does not say Vasago is benevolent because he is weak. It does not say he is safe. It says he is of the same nature, the same order of being, the same structural class within the hierarchy, but that his orientation is different. The category is the same, the alignment is not. Not a lesser demon, a different one. The etymology that Peterson's apparatus helps clarify is the question of Vasago's relationship to the Kabbalistic angel Sitael, sometimes associated with the Shem HaMepharash, the 72-letter name of God used in certain Jewish mystical traditions. Peterson notes that several manuscript variants link Vasago's governing function, 26 legions, to numerological correspondences that appear in both the grimoire tradition and in Kabbalistic angelology. The number 26 is the numerical value of the Tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name of God in Hebrew. That is not a coincidence that the manuscript compilers would have missed. A name that governs a number that is itself a name. Now, Peterson himself makes no supernatural claims. His apparatus is scholarly, not devotional, and it would be a misrepresentation of his work to suggest otherwise. The question of whether any of this reflects a genuine metaphysical reality is one Peterson's edition explicitly brackets. That is the correct scholarly posture. But what fascinates me about Peterson's contribution is what it does to the historical argument. Because when a rigorous critical edition confirms that Vasago's description, including the anomalous descriptor good, is present and consistent across multiple independent manuscript witnesses, separated by centuries of transmission, that is no longer an editorial choice, it is a textual fact. The word was there before Mathers, before Crowley, before any of the modern editors who might have had reasons to shape the narrative. The archive confirmed it. Every time someone checked, the question now is not whether the manuscripts say what they say, they do. The question is, what the people who have read those manuscripts across 5 centuries believed was worth preserving, and what they chose to do about it. I need to pause here and flag a conflict in the instructions. The writing directions for sections 7 and 8 describe substantial passages, philosophical moral with 3 beats, tricolon return, CTA with farewell and subscribe, prompt, that clearly require 150 to 280 words and 20 to 45 words respectively, as stated in those same directions.